Hello everyone, and guess what is so special about today? Yes, we are going to show an excellent chess game between Jeffrey Xiong and Levon Aronian, but we often do that, but today is something else. Today is the 50th anniversary of most likely the absolutely most famous World Chess Championship match that ever took place. It is, of course, the 1972 World Chess Championship match between Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky that took place in Reykjavik, Iceland. So for those of you who are older subscribers to the channel, you might remember I did a saga on this event. It has some 65 videos, and if you still haven't seen it, do check it out. I will put a link to it in the description below. It will be the first thing you see, so if you have time to watch 65 videos, it will increase your vast knowledge greatly. Now, that being said, let's check out this game, as here one of the players definitely played like Bobby Fischer in that World Chess Championship match. So Jeffrey Xiong, who is, I believe, the youngest player in the event. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he is. And he's playing against the absolute strongest player in the tournament, Levon Aronian. It's going to be great. But Xiong had an excellent first day, and he's the leader after the first day. So a good chance for Aronian to take some points from Jeffrey. We have knight to f3. Xiong opens with the Reti opening, pawn to d5 by Levon. Sorry about that. D5 striking in the center. We have D4 and C5 now, going for the Krauss variation. C4 striking in the center, and D captures on C4, going in the Queen's Gambit accepted variation, the Günzburg defense. D5 now, advancing the pawn, as Levon's C pawn is now doubled here. We have E6 challenging the pawn, and knight to C3 defending the pawn. We have E captures, Queen captures, and an early Queen trade. Queen captures, Knight captures, and now Bishop to D6. So it doesn't seem like anything wonderful is happening here. Levon has a double C pawn, and this has all been played before, but give it a few moments. We have Knight to D2 now, going after the C4 pawn. Also, you can now play E4, F3, Knight to C6, and now Knight captures on C4, attacking the bishop. We have bishop back to B8. Again, all been played before, nothing new here. E4, and now Knight G to E7 by Levon. Usually Knight to D4 is played here to threaten Knight to C2 check, but it's very easy to stop this. You can just put the Knight back to E3 to guard the C2 square, or play Bishop to D3 to guard the C2 square, so it's not that strong. So Knight G to E7 by Levon, Bishop to E3 going after the C5 pawn, and now pawn to B6, defending and preparing to develop the light square bishop. We have castles here, castles queenside, and there is a game where Bishop to B7 was played, or rather a few of them, but here Levon just castles kingside, and it is now, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Jeffrey deals with this. With Bishop to E2, Rook to E8, nicely developing. Once the knight moves, the E4 pawn will be attacked. So knight captures on E7, Rook captures, and now how do you defend the pawn? Well, you could play something like F3, but that's not nearly as cool as what Jeffrey played. He played pawn to E5, and what is this? The pawn is attacked by the knight, by the bishop, by the rook, so is it a free pawn? Not really, and that's what makes this position so awesome. Problem is, if you play bishop captures on e5, that's not really going to work. Just knight captures on e5, and now it doesn't matter what you do. If you play knight captures on e5, then we just deliver rook to d8 check, so you're going to get checkmated. And then if you play rook captures on e5, then we play bishop f3, attack the knight here. If the knight moves, the rook hangs, and if you play bishop to b7, then we just go rook to d7, and you can resign. The bishop is hanging. Once you move the bishop or defend the bishop, then the knight hangs, so this is resigns. And another thing you can do, instead of capturing with the bishop, let's say you capture with the knight, this is even worse, as you get checkmated right away. Rook d8 check, rook e8 captures, this is checkmate. So here, after e5, bishop to b7 by Levon, but now pawn to f4, and now instead of having pawns on f2 and e4, you have f4 and e5, which is just incredible. Here we have bishop to c7. Levon wants to get the other rook into the game, and now knight to d6. Beautiful square for the knight, and it's best to just eliminate this knight. The bishop here is hanging, so you have to do something about it. Maybe something like captures, rook captures on d6, and now let's say pawn to g5 even would give black a very interesting game. However, here Levon tried knight to d4. He says, all right, you capture my bishop, I'm going to capture your bishop with check, but now Jeffrey's position is already winning if he plays everything perfectly, and he does. Bishop captures on d4, now forcing bishop captures on d6, which is what happens. Bishop back to f2, the bishop on d6 is still hanging, so bishop back to c7, and now bishop to h4. And now both players have the bishop pair. The material is equal, however, Xiong's bishop pair is much stronger. What do you do with the rook? If you move the rook anywhere away from the 7th rank, then rook d7 just wins the game. For example, rook e to e8, we're going to play rook d7, attack the bishop, and once you defend it, we're going to play bishop to b5, and there just isn't a good move here for Levon. We're going to capture the bishop, rook captures, we're going to capture this rook here, and if you move the rook, bishop e7, again, this is resigns. So after bishop to h4, Levon does the only thing he can, and that is to play pawn to f6, but now you open up this diagonal. So bishop to c4 with check, king to f8, and now comes rook h to f1. Beautiful move, aligning the rook with the king on the f-file, even though e captures on f6 does seem to be even stronger. Point is that after bishop captures on f4 with check, let's say king to b1, there's never a good way to actually recapture the pawn. If you capture, we play bishop captures on f6, we attack the rook, and after rook e4, attacking the bishop, now we play b3, and it's just a terrible position for black. The bishops are completely cutting off. Whoops, that's not a bishop arrow. The black king, rook to d7 is coming, and well, this rook is coming to f1. Game over. So after king to f8, rook h to f1 was played. Also a wonderful move. Not the maybe not the cleanest, but it is possible to play it. Bishop captures on g2, and now rook to g1. This is a beautiful move, this rook g1, because it does seem like an automatic bishop to f2. You attack the bishop and you keep the rook on the f-file. But not so much, because after the bishop moves, there's no good way to do anything here. You really want the bishop on the g-file, because now after, let's say, e captures, black can recapture g captures on f6, which of course would be impossible if the rook was on g-file. Rook g8 would be checkmate. So here, okay, you can play bishop captures, but now rook e4. Again, we attack the bishop. We don't give white time to play rook to g1. b3 and now b5. We force the bishop to move. Once the bishop moves, now we can capture here, and black is back in the game. So rook to g1, absolutely essential, attacking the bishop, and now if you move the bishop, just e captures on f6. So here, Levon tries b5. There's really no other good way to try and defend this. Bishop captures on b5. At least you get the bishop away from this diagonal, so you don't have to worry about getting checkmated. Now comes bishop to e4, and now bishop back to c4. So Levon gave up the b5 pawn to win some time, not to get checkmated, and now he plays g5. This is, these are all desperate measures, but he is Levon. He will try to prevail. We have bishop to f2 now, going after the c5 pawn, and again, no good way to defend it. If you try bishop to b6, then we just play e captures on f6. The rook is attacked. Once the rook moves, we're going to play f captures on g5, and it's just absolutely unplayable. Again, the white king is completely cut off, black king completely cut off from entering the game. The rooks and bishops will start marching forward. You can even start pushing the pawn, h4, h5, g6. You can basically play anything here and win this with white. So instead, rook to c8 was played, one last attempt by Levon, hoping that the bishop captures on c5 if maybe Jeffrey will get a little bit greedy and go after material, but he doesn't. He goes for the absolute strongest, bishop to a6, just attacks the rook, and now what do you play? Rook c to e8, and only now bishop captures on c5. We have bishop to b6, and here, even though it seems like you know everything about the position, there might be something even better. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the only winning idea for Jeffrey while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not falling for Levon's mind tricks and capturing the rook. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is e captures on f6. But just because I know you guys want to see what happens if the rook is captured, we will show it. If bishop captures here, rook captures on e7, and now how do you win this? your rook on g1 is hanging, and that's a problem. But your even bigger problem is that there's no way to save the rook. If you move the rook, let's say rook g3, then you allow rook c7 check. And now what? Rook to c3, okay, we block check, but now bishop to e3 check. The rook here is pinned, you can't move the rook. So rook to d2, as the king has no squares, the bishop pair is now unstoppable. Rook to d2, now we simply trade everything. Rook captures, b captures, and even bishop captures on f4 before we win back the exchange, and that's it. E captures on f6, let's say king f7, king d1, you unpin, black captures, white captures, and now king captures on f6, and all of a sudden, from a completely winning endgame, you have equal material, and there is nothing to look forward to here. So big congratulations to those of you who decided on e captures on f6, because that is the only way to win this game. And now after you've done this, now pretty much everything is winning. So bishop captures on c5 by Levon, now f captures on e7 with check. We have rook captures on e7. If bishop captures on e7, then you really don't have any problems, just f captures on g5. You're up material, you're up 3 pawns, of course, completely winning for Xiong. So he tries one last idea. Levon rook captures on e7. Now the bishop still controlling this diagonal, bishop to e3. If you can get bishop to e3 check in, you will be fine, but of course Xiong doesn't allow it. Idea would be something like, let's say you play rook to g5, you grab a pawn, attack the bishop, then bishop e3, and now you resign. There's nothing to do here. Rook to d2 on the move. Now rook d7, you pile up on the rook, and now you resign, basically. So here, instead of this, weird idea, we have rook to d8 with check. Now comes king to f7, and now bishop to c4 with check. Finally, going after this diagonal like we've been doing the entire game. King to f6, and now rook to f8 with check. We have king to g7 attacking the rook, and now a spectacular finish to the game. Rook captures on g5, and it was in this position on move 34 that Levon Aronian resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. If the rook is accepted, then rook to g8 will be checkmate, and if you don't, again, it's not much better. Let's say king to h6, we're gonna capture the bishop on c5. Now you're just down too much material, you're down a full rook, and you're down 2 pawns. There, of course, is no way you can play this. So really a spectacular game by Jeffrey Xiong, taking down Levon Aronian like that, who tried a tricky opening. He tried to get Xiong out of his comfort zone, but Xiong is just playing incredible chess. Won the first day, and now starting his second day, just crushing Levon Aronian like this. And there are few players there that are as creative as Levon Aronian. So out creating him is definitely something to applaud here. That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, if any of you are new to the channel or to the chess world, or if you've just wandered down the YouTube rabbit hole and are watching chess for some reason, do click on the link in the description below. The first thing you will see, and experience the incredible Bobby Fischer saga. You will appreciate chess much more after checking that out. Once again, really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Kalman D, Valer Morgulis, Steven Abrams, Nagarjuna Ponugoti, and David Bacon for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful event until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.